This video, I will be showing you Redshift for Revit. This is a powerful GPU real-time rendering solution that allows you to create some really high-quality renderings from your Revit projects really quickly, but more importantly, they are extremely accurate. Let's go. We will start off by connecting our project in Revit with Redshift, starting Redshift from there, and then we're going to be using Redshift in order to modify materials, add realistic grass, populate it with some highly realistic objects, and just create an amazing scene. Now, if you would like to follow along, I would encourage you to check out Redshift, download it for yourself, and test it out. The link will be up in the cards above and down in the description of this video. And full disclosure, this is a sponsored video. So now, without any further ado, let's jump straight into Revit. And here we are in Revit. So when you install Redshift, it's going to appear over here as an additional tab. And now to start it, you just simply click on Start Connection. That's going to load your scene into Redshift, and it's going to start Redshift. And as you can see, now it's loading and we have all of the materials applied. Now, when you start it, you're going to get this navigate window. So it's going to just help you figure out the navigation. So we simply interact by holding the left mouse click. It's basically like Orbit in Revit. If we hold the scroll wheel, it's just going to pan around, and then we can look around by holding the right key. We can also navigate by holding the right key and then kind of looking, and also using the W, S, A, and D buttons in order to navigate. You can also go up and down by using the E and Q buttons, and you can speed up by holding the Shift. So it's just going to move a little bit quicker. If you want to slow down, you just hold the Control key and then it's going to move slower. Now we have two options. We have the fly, which is what we're doing right now. We're just kind of flying around the model, but we also have the option to walk. So when you hit the space key, it's going to toggle. I really love how it's going to you fall down to the ground, and then you can walk around just like a person. I'm just going to close this down because we don't need it. And then, as you can see, it's going to interact with the environment. So we're kind of climbing up one step. Here we cannot go through the table. If I want to go up the stairs, I can go up the stairs just like this. As you can see, it works very well. Now, if you get stuck like this at the glass, you can simply hit the space key and you're going to toggle to fly mode, and then you hit the space key again and you're just going to drop down, and you can continue walking and interacting with your model. Now here on the camera and navigation drop menu, you can see some of the options for the camera and for navigation. So for example, for walk, you can adjust the height here. So I'm actually tad bit shorter, so I'm just going to adjust that. There we go. So you can apply it however you want, and then you can just switch to the fly mode if that's what you prefer. But I'm guessing in most cases you're just going to be kind of orbiting around. Okay, so that's how you navigate. Now let's take a look at what can we do with this model. So the first thing I dislike about this current situation is the ugly vegetation from Revit. So these are those RPC trees, which we don't really like. So let's go here to the scene option, and here when I switch to objects, we can see just by different categories, and if I open up planting, you can see all of the planting that we have here from the Revit project. So this is kind of like your project browser connected with the properties panel as well, because we can open up everything that's included there. But here I'm just going to toggle off the visibility of that, and now as you can see that's gone, and then we can add some nice vegetation from Redshift. So I'm just going to close down the scene menu here, and then let's open up the library. And the first thing that we're going to do is adjust the grass. So Redshift will interact with all of the subdivisions that you have from Revit. So for example, this grass is a subdivision. So what we can do is we can simply open up the scatter surface, which allows you to, well, scatter across the surface, and this is perfect for grass. So if I go down here to presets, we can see we have these lawn presets, which are perfect. So I can just drag one over here, and then I can use the picker to pick the grass. So let's just click here, and it's going to apply that grass. As you can see, that this is what that looks like. looks really nice. Now we can see back here in the hills looks kind of weird with this patchiness, and that's because we haven't checked on the align. So if I check on the align, it's going to align those. These are essentially grass panels that are kind of scattered around, so it just kind of aligns those to the actual surface. And this is what that looks like now. So I'm just going to go here to select, and then what we can do is if I orbit around, you can see what that grass actually looks like. So here we can see the detail of that grass. So as you can see, it's quite detailed. You can see kind of individual grass blades. So yeah, it looks really, really cool. So yeah, that's just a few clicks and this is what you get. You get that level of realism. Obviously, when you render it, it looks much, much better. So anyways, let's now continue working on our model. We do lack some trees, so I'm just going to zoom out a little bit and let's add those. So again, we're going to scatter, but now we're going to use the scatter brush so we can kind of paint in the trees. So for that, let's go here back to home, and then here we have the option to add plants. So for plants, let's select the trees, and then what I can do is I can move here in the scatter menu. I can move some trees, so I can move this tree and then perhaps this tree and this one. So now we have 3 trees and we can basically scatter these around. This is the radius of our scatter tool, so as you can see, you can make it bigger, smaller. Here we have some settings like density, collision radius, scale. Now what I like to do for scale range, I like to set it up to go from like 60 to 120. So basically when it scatters these trees, some will be smaller, some will be bigger, and I think that looks really nice. So let's try that. Let's place some trees over here. Let's see what that looks like. We can then place a few more. I'm also going to move to this side and let's place some trees here. Now let's place some trees here as well, and then that's going to look like this. Perhaps a few more here. Now you may be thinking, well, maybe this is a bit too much, and that's fine. We can actually remove those. So what I'll do is I'm just going to switch this to remove, and then what we can do is we can make this a lot smaller, and then we can perhaps remove just this one, for example. So I'm just going to click there, and as you can see, it's going to remove that tree. And then of course you can use the align, but I prefer not to because it's just going to tilt the trees according to the topography. We don't want that. So I'm just going to go back here to the select tool, and as you can see, these are all of the trees. Again, if we zoom in on the tree, you can see it's so detailed. You can see all of the branches, all of the leaves. Okay, this is crazy, the level of detail, and this is great for creating some views. I usually like to kind of add a bit of depth by positioning the tree a bit closer, or some vegetation, and then yeah, as you can see, the realism really looks, well, realistic. Now if I move this off to the side, what you'll notice inside of Revit is that these elements are going to appear as well in Revit as these blocks. So when you're working in Revit, you can close those down or just turn off their visibility, but just keep in mind that they will appear as these elements. And also we have turned off the vegetation here in Redshift. In Revit, it's still there. So if you want to turn it off in Revit, you would have to change the visibility settings or hide it and so on. Now, one more thing that I want to show you here between working in kind of Revit and Redshift side by side is the option for the camera. So it can be one way or bi-directional. So here you can see we have actually changed this camera just by navigating around in Redshift. So if I move here in Redshift, Revit will move as well. So if you want this, you can keep it. I actually prefer to keep it off just because it slows down the performance just a little bit, and I don't really need it, so why do that? So anyways, I'm just going to go back here to Redshift, and now let's take a look at some of the materials. So here we can see that we have a lot of glass. Now this is Revit glass, which is unfortunately often ugly glass, so let's change that. I'm just going to go back here to Home, and then I'm going to scroll down here to Materials, open that up, and then here we have some glass, and let's use this one, and I'm just going to drag it over and place it over this. So if this is a material in Revit, wherever in the project you have that material applied, it's going to apply that new Redshift material. So for example, here it's the same glass material here and here, and it just used the same one. Now if you have a different material where you want to apply this one, for example here the railing has a different glass, what I can do is I can just use the material sampler. So you simply click here on this glass, you hold the shift key, and then you can apply that glass on other places where you want the same glass material, in this case the railing. Now let's take a look at this wood. Let's say I want to change this, I want something a little bit different. So what I can do is I can go back here to materials, let's go to wood materials. Now here we have this decking, perhaps something like this. So I'm just going to drag that over, and now it's going to quickly render that material. And this is what we have. Now for all of these materials, what you can do is you can go here to Scene, you can go to Materials. This is where we have our materials, and now down here we have options for the material where we can set it up. We have mapping, and then we have assignment. Now I'm interested in mapping. We have a UV channel, but also a triplanar, and then here we can make some changes. So for example, if I want to rotate this by 90 degrees, I can do that, make it vertical. I can change the scale even if I want to make those blanks a little larger, and so on. And then of course, if I want to apply this elsewhere, I can simply use the material sampler, hold the shift key, and then apply it wherever I like in this project. And of course, as you can see, there's quite a lot of materials, and from what I understand, a lot more will be added as well. Now let's continue populating our scene. So I'm just going to close this down and maybe zoom out a little bit. I'm going to switch this to the selection tool, and now let's add some additional items or objects. So I'm just going to go back here to Home. Then I'm going to, let's add a character. And then perhaps we can add this person. So you simply drag that over, and then you place it on a surface. So any object, you place it on a surface, and it's going to appear like this. And then it's going to go into this move tool, and as you can see, you get a little gizmo. Now if you use the arrows, you simply move it left, right, up, down, and so on. If you use this green option for changing the angle, but if you click on the yellow dot, then you can place it on other surfaces. Now obviously this doesn't work, but for example I can place this person here, and yeah, that's how we can adjust objects. So this is for characters. As you can see, we have a lot of options. Then let's go with some vehicles. So I'm just going to drag over a vehicle like this over here, and then we can adjust the angle as well. And that's what the vehicle is going to look like. Now for all of these objects, you can see it here in the scene. So now we have that object here. We can turn it off, or the visibility of that object if we don't want it anymore. But yeah, I'm happy with this object. Also, if you want to copy any of these objects, what you can do is simply hold the Control-C and then make a movement like this, and it's just going to copy that element. And then if you want to delete it, you simply hit delete or backspace, and it's going to delete that item. And then of course we have a lot more options in terms of furniture. So for example, I can go here to furniture, and then let's see, do we have something for outdoor? Yeah, perfect. Something that we can place here. So for example, I like this one, so let's drag it over. And this is what that looks like. And you can see you can select individual items and then move those around. So for example, if I want to move this carpet a little bit in, or move this in a little bit, or change its position, yeah, we can do that, and we can adjust these. And as you can see, this is highly realistic, as you can see from the level of detail and everything. Now of course, when you're doing your final renderings, that's when it's really going to come to shine. Okay, so moving forward, let's now talk about the environment. So here on the scene panel, we have the environment. We have a couple of options. So you have your HDRI, and if I just orbit around a little bit differently, we can see that. And then we can change the intensity, and we can also change the rotation. And then you can load in different ones if you already have some ready, and you can apply those. Now for the physical, we have different settings. So for example, here we can adjust the time. So if you can want to see kind of different shading for your projects. Then in terms of the location, it's actually going to be pulling that information from Revit. So if you have your location set up correctly in Revit, Redshift is going to copy that and use that information. So it's going to give you very accurate and realistic results. So here, as I said, you can adjust the time, you can do it numerically, you can adjust the date. Now we can also set it to evening or even night, and then if you have some artificial lights in your project, it's going to accurately replicate those. Now we also have some options here for the sun and sky. We can adjust clouds, so if you want it to be cloudy, you can adjust it here, and then we have all of the settings for the clouds themselves. So overall, Redshift is really powerful and really fast. The results are really great, really realistic, but also more importantly, very accurate, which is what I really like. So I do encourage you to check it out. And if you want to do that, you can just follow the link up in the cards above and then also down in the description of this video.